So this basically was just giving the feds, the cities, I don't want to say wish list, but like advocacy
position.
goals.
So this is remarkably complicated. Regardless of where you stand on the issue of legalization of marijuana, the federal government has announced they want to do it. And it results in a whole number of different changes that people probably don't think about up front. Things like, how do you zone for dispensaries? Is it a Shoppers Drug Mart? Do you zone them as drugstores? Do you zone them the same way as you zone liquor stores? You know, do you want to prevent proliferation of too many of those on one street? These are all things the city needs to worry about. The other things the city needs to worry about are around enforcement. So, you know, do we allow people to have plants in their home? If you have too many plants in your home and it's causing health problems or mold problems or building code problems, those are the things that the city needs to deal with. So there's a whole whack of situations that the city has to manage. Oh, of course, and the third and most important is law enforcement. What will the laws be around driving while stoned? How do you test that? What does that mean for the police service and how they manage through these things? And how do you deal with schools and with others to manage some of the negative aspects of increased usage among young people if such a thing happens? So basically, there are a lot of very big questions, and the federal government, to their credit, has a task force and has released a paper asking all of these questions, and today was our opportunity to give some of those answers from the city's perspective.
Now that was
a very long answer.
But it was a good answer. But there were concerns about the notion that, you know, obviously some of the things that you touched upon, that if the substance is legal, that people would then be free to grow as much as they want, and that the city would have a concern in that. So you can't prohibit, but you also can't.
Well, today's biggest discussion around the committee table was that our administration's recommendation was that you're not allowed to grow it at home at all. And the members of council said that might be going a bit far, because the concerns about home growing that have to do with mold, building envelope, problems like that, could also happen if you grew thousands of azaleas in your home. And so committee really today said what we should do is have a restriction on the scale of home growth, but not an overall prohibition. So that if council passes it, that will be the city's position. You could have a few plants, but not a full-scale grow-up.
But where the city goes on this issue really will depend on the direction of the feds. Like if the feds say, legal, you can buy it, places will be set up, but you can't grow your own.
No, that's right. So what we were talking about today was the city's advocacy to the federal government. The federal government is ultimately going to create the legal framework. And so today was really about the city saying this is what we'd like to see in that framework.
The other issue was the sharing of revenues.
Yes.
So where would the city fit into that?
Well, the second issue that we discussed today is what do you do with the revenues from the marijuana if you tax it? And certainly in the state of Colorado, by some measures you've seen a windfall for the state government. By other measures you've only seen increased costs and increased benefits. The issue here, though, is that if the federal and provincial governments are getting money from the sale of marijuana, but the city is the one doing all the enforcement, it makes sense for us to be able to have some of that cash in order to pay for the enforcement.
And will the city have to do a lot of this enforcement and even
absolutely, because we're the building code guys. We have to develop the regulations. We have to do the zoning. And of course, ultimately, we fund the police service. So all of those things are things where we might see increased cost.
And then there was a discussion of adding other substances.
Yeah, one of the members of council pointed out that there are sin taxes on alcohol and cigarettes now, but we don't get any revenue from those. And same thing, we have to do the regulation. So the example I gave is, imagine how much money we spend in cleaning up cigarette butts that people flick out of their cars. And yet the taxes that come from the sale of cigarettes, not one penny of that flows to the city.
So again, advocacy, but you personally don't sound terribly optimistic that the city will be getting a check.
I enjoy opening up means of discussion with others so that they can see and do what's right.
But chances are?
I think they're okay. I don't think they'll reopen the other sin taxes, but I think the chances on creating a proper tax system for marijuana are not bad.